Call the meeting to order. Monterey Peninsula Water Management District regular meeting Board of Directors for Monday, May 17th at 6:00 p.m. Roll call, please.
Mayor Director Robertson,
I am here.
Supervisor Director Adams,
Here.
Director Anderson,
We're doing roll call.
Director Anderson. Okay. Director Mallett,
Here.
Director Riley,
Here.
Vice Chair Paul,
Here.
Chair Edwards.
Here.
Chair Edwards, we just have one director missing. That would be Director, oh, she's here. Director Anderson?
Here.
Okay, there you go. All right, let the record reflect that all directors are present.
Okay, let us all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which we stand, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, any addition and corrections to the agenda?
There are none.
Thank you. Next item will be oral communications. Anyone wish to address the board on consent calendar, information items, closed session items, or matters not listed on the agenda may do so only during oral communication. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. The public may comment on all other items at the time they are presented to the board. Oral communications are now open.
All right, so the Board of Directors welcomes your public comment during oral communications on matters not on today's agenda. If you would like to provide public input, please raise your hand via Zoom, or if you're calling in, push *9. When it is your turn, I will identify you by your name. If you're calling in, I will identify you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. At that time, you will need to push *6 to unmute yourself, and you may identify yourself for the clerk's record. If you're joining us on your electronic device and are calling in, please mute or lower your device volume to limit any feedback that may be transmitted via Zoom. Thank you. And Director Edwards, let me check the attendee side, and we do have Michael Bear. So before I allow him to speak, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And directors, are you able to see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, so let me go ahead and invite Michael Bear. Michael Bear, when you're ready, please present your comment.
Yeah, good afternoon, directors. It's good to see you again. I've been away for a couple of months from the meetings. We are in the middle of it now. It's quite an interesting time after all these years to be where we are in this process. I just have a quick question. I don't know to what extent you can share things. It's related to Cal-Am's lawsuit related to the EIR. And I had heard that LAFCO would not proceed until that was resolved. And LAFCO does seem to be proceeding. And I haven't heard about any resolution with the Cal-Am, when Cal-Am sued you. I'm not talking about the CPUC lawsuit. I'm talking about the CEQA lawsuit they sued on you. And I'm just hoping I know whatever you can share to update me about that situation is greatly appreciated. Thank you very much. That's the end of my comment.
Thank you.
I apologize. I didn't realize I was on mute. Chair Edwards, I do not see anybody with their hands raised. So I'll go ahead and return this back to the board.
Thank you, Joel. Okay, next item is consent calendar. Any board members would like anything pulled from consent calendar? If not, Joel, check with the public to see, do we have Anyone that likes something pulled from the consent calendar?
Edwards, I do not see anybody with their hands raised, so I'll go ahead and return this back to the board.
Thank you. Do we have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar?
I so move.
So moved from the vice chair. Who was the next one? And second by Director Amy. All right, roll call vote.
Mayor Director Roberson,
Yes.
Supervisor Director Adams,
Aye.
Director Anderson,
Yes.
Director Malik,
Yes.
Director Riley,
Aye.
Vice Chair Paul,
Yes.
Chair Edwards.
Yes,
The motion passes on a vote of 7-0.
7-0. Thank you. Next item, General Manager's report.
Yes, thank you very much, Joelle. You can share your screen for the benefit of the group. There we go.
Directors, are you all able to see the screen?
Yes.
Yep, you're doing good.
All right, next slide, please. This is the Carmel River and the Seaside Groundwater Basin compared actual to target. The important takeaway is we remain below the target in terms of production from those two portions of the resource system. Next slide. These are the ASR recoveries. So to date, there's been no recovery of stored ASR water. We're still sitting on approximately 1,200 acre feet of water in the ground. Table 13 water rights, that's generally conditioned on a wetter winter. And so you can see with our relatively dry year that there was very little taken from that water right. Pure Water Monterey is actually producing more than was budgeted, which is a good thing. And then Sand City D-Cell still off a little bit and in discussion about new wells and so forth. Next slide is deliveries or production for customer service. And this is a measure of water demand. And you can see in the lower right-hand corner that the total year to date is slightly better than the total year to date at the same time last year. We're 6 acre feet ahead. What's compelling though is last month we were 154 acre feet ahead. So our very dry April has likely resulted in an increase in irrigation, kind of closing the gap on water demand versus supply. The recorded rainfall, even though it felt like parts of the peninsula were in a cloud and drizzly over the weekend, we're still relatively nowhere. And as you can see, we're past the rainy season. So it's highly unlikely that we're going to see much more rainfall, if any, which means we'll end the year more than likely in a critically dry year. But we will see. We'll also look at this unimpaired stream flow data as well. The San Clemente rain gauge, next slide. You can see the red line is cumulative and the blue lines are individual days. So despite the fact that, as I mentioned, it felt like we were in a cloud all weekend, there was nothing really registering on the San Clemente rain gauge. And then finally, unimpaired flow were significantly, the blue bars being current year, the maroon bars being historical. We remain significantly below historical, approximately 20% this past month. So it's heading into being a dry or critically dry year. John Lear will, under item 11, give a kind of a snapshot of where storage stands relative to the needs for the next 15 months and I'm sorry, 17 months. And the reason we do that is we take a look at how much water supply we have available to us after the rainy season, and try to confirm that we can make it through the remaining 5 months of this water year and a full 12 months of the following water year, of course, beginning October 1st. And so that'll be the subject of the public hearing, item 11. I do want to point out that because it's a dry year, we are very concerned, but we don't use the word drought. I've noticed the governors use the word drought. A number of folks are calling this a drought. We typically don't label it a drought until we have 2 years in a row of dry or critically dry conditions. So we'll be watching what happens through the winter of this next rainy season, November through February, March. And between now and then, we will be implementing additional awareness of conservation activities. Our last week in the weekly, the Cedar Street Times and the Pine Cone, we called out attention to it being a critically dry, a very dry year on the Central Coast. But keep in mind that we're always in stage 1 of the 4-stage conservation and rationing plan. Stage 1 is heightened awareness on water waste, and stage 2 is increased enforcement, more publicity, and increased voluntary conservation as well. So we will be starting to get that message out here in the next couple of months heading into summer. The 3rd stage of our conservation rationing plan are conservation rates, where your water rates would go up 25%. And if that successfully dampens the demand, then we stop there. If it does not, then they go up 40%. So that economic penalty is designed to induce voluntary or economically motivated rationing, if you will. And then finally, the 4th stage is rationing primarily at the residential level, because about 66% of all water on the peninsula is residential. And the impacts from residential conservation efforts are more significant. But we really don't expect to get there during this cycle. It may be something we begin to look at if we experience a second dry year, but just want to call people's attention to it. And anything that anybody can do to start reducing their water usage here this late spring and into summer, it's time to start thinking about that. So we appreciate everybody kind of chipping in and doing the best they can to avoid water waste, washing your car. We're going to be back to the restaurants. As they reopen, we see there's a lot of serving of water without asking the patron. And so we'll be back on the conservation bandwagon here, looking for voluntary conservation efforts. So stay tuned on that one. Item 6, which is an update on the development of water.
General Manager, could you hold up
Yep.
on that one? Director Adams, I see your hand up. You want to comment?
Thank you. I wanted to comment and to just ask, when we talk about conservation and the way things are going to be going, I heard, and you probably know this as well, maybe you were even going to touch on it, that the governor's May revision has $5 billion dollars in it for drought, another $300 million for the groundwater management activities, and another $500 million for repurposing land, like buying out land because it's been impacted by sea level rise. But thinking about I'm sure that we're going to try to get every cent that we can. Would there ever be the possibility that instead of penalizing, that we could offer incentives, like if people took out their landscaping and put in wood chips, that we would do, certain amount of money toward that sort of thing? Is that on the radar as far as other possibilities?
Well, yeah, we still always run our rebate program. So those are our incentivized savings programs. You can certainly remove a lawn and replace it with bark chips or drought tolerant landscaping and get credit for lawn removal. So some of those things are there. We are targeting that 5.1
Wait.
billion. Yeah.
You can get a rebate for lawn removal. There's
Yeah.
no credit for removing.
I meant rebate. Sorry about that. Yep. So those programs still exist, and we encourage people to take advantage of them. The biggest bang for the rebate dollar is high efficiency clothes washers. They've had a significant impact. A load of laundry used to be about 40 gallons, then went down to 16 in the early version of the high efficiency clothes washers, and now are even in kind of the 8 and 9 gallon per load range. So significant impact. And you can practically buy a high efficiency washer for free with the rebate. So
That's pretty good. It would still
Yeah.
cost a lot of money to replace the lawn though with wood chips. So maybe with some of the 5 billion, we can try to do something that's maybe our regular program, but amped up.
yeah, it's interesting. We have minor concerns that the drought relief proposal could have a negative impact on another Prop 1 like bond initiative that was being talked about for next year, a much bigger water infrastructure proposition. Hopefully the two can both survive, so we can look at some drought relief here with this legislative session, and then get to a voter approved debt next November in 2022. So with that, any other questions on current conditions and weather? And okay.
Go ahead, Director Riley.
Just a quick question about the support, the financial support via CalAm for the rebate program. Is that still alive and well in their application?
Yes, it is. Stephanie, you want to weigh in there, or Dave Laredo on timing? It's still a timing issue. So we have been funding the rebates as the district, awaiting a final settlement, signed settlement on the rate case. And then that conservation surcharge needs to have some time in place to actually start generating funds to reimburse the district for what it's written in rebates.
And that general rate case has hit a slight ripple when they changed the assigned ALJ at the last moment. So we have a new ALJ in there. Briefing has all been done, but we're in a holding pattern until we find out what the new ALJ is going to do with the settlement agreement.
Yep.
But it's included in the settlement agreement so far.
It is included in the settlement agreement, but there have been times that the commission has rejected the settlement agreement of the parties and has put in its own order. So
Yeah, I remember.
have to see.
I remember. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, Jim.
All right, on water supply project, there's no new developments to report on the desalination side. On the Pure Water Monterey side, deep injection well number 3 is drilled, screened, and is now currently being developed by pump, leading to a pump test shortly. Deep injection well number 4 is drilled, started installing the screen and casing today. So we're making progress. I don't think that, original schedule was November for deep injection well number 3 and February for number 4. We may lose a little bit of time kind of waiting to see how the schedule comes out, but nevertheless, making progress, which is the important thing. The basic project is running quite well at over 300 acre feet per month. Last month, I believe, was 309. Might have been 313, but anyway, just over 300. And, obviously 31-day months are better than 30-day months and so forth. But so we are just in the process of approving next year's company water rate, which will be just a little bit over $2,800 per acre foot. 2,808 is what we are looking at. So still a bargain. quite a bit more expensive than pumping it out of the ground, but we knew that the day of inexpensive water was destined to move away at some point. So that's where we're at on pure water. And then for those of you who were unable to attend the LAFCO study session, I do have a brief presentation on that just so the public can understand where we're at. The two critical pieces that remain before this board can make a decision that it may want to hold a hearing of public necessity is LAFCO approval to activate our latent powers to sell retail water, and then the actual findings that would be part of a resolution of necessity in order for you to act on it. And so those are the two big pieces of work. We'll talk a little bit more about it. We've got a resolution later, as well as some approval items. But if Joelle, if you'd put up the PowerPoint, I'll just walk the public through it. So this was a study session, April 26th. It was for the benefit of the commissioners. The LAFCO stands for Local Agency Formation Commission. It is a commission of the county. There are 7 representatives plus alternates, 2 county supervisors, 1 mayor, public agency rep, and so forth. This session was called mostly to give the commissioners their first chance to begin to ask questions, learn a little bit more about the history of where we're at or how we got here, and so forth. So next slide, Joelle, please. So we reminded the commissioners that, in fact, Measure J was a voter initiative, not something that our board voluntarily decided, that it was pretty resoundingly passed in November 2018. And the key words were, if and when feasible, to secure and maintain public ownership of all water production, storage, and delivery within our territory. Next slide, please. And, you know, the biggest consideration is an acquisition of the Cal-Am Monterey system in the public interest. And the courts will be asking that question. Some of the LAFCO commissioners are asking a similar question. And we've kind of identified the 3 legs of the stool, you know, an overused metaphor, I guess. But the key is, can we operate it at lower cost? Can we provide the same or better quality of service? And will there be an improvement in the governance and transparency of the organization? And if they are, one would consider it to be in the public interest. And that seems to be the motivation of both the drafters of the proposition, as well as a number of supporters in the public. Next slide. So we have to come to LAFCO to do 2 things. One is annex parcels that we discovered are in Cal-Am's main system, but oddly not within our jurisdictional boundary. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. And then the second is to activate latent power. So our legislation that established us in 1977 lists pretty broad sweeping powers that the district has, but because we've not actively at a large scale delivered retail, managed and distributed potable water at the retail level, that would be the latent power that would be activated. Next slide, please. So I mentioned that there's some parcels. Basically, we're looking at the majority of the Cal-Am, Maine, Ryan Ranch, Bishop, and Hidden Hills systems, which our boundary basically contains almost 100% of all of those. That would exclude 5 satellite water systems, Garrapata to the south, Toro and Ambler Park, Ralph Lane, and Chular. Those satellite systems are not in our jurisdiction. We don't have the authority to condemn them with condemnation action. But of the 33 existing connections in Yankee Point and 9 in Hidden Hills, there are a bunch of vacant parcels as well. So we would pick up 58 total parcels. We will be publicly notifying those parcel owners at the end of this month, and we'll provide them with some form of a workshop just to explain what the situation is. And so Supervisor Adams, I believe they are all in your supervisory district. So we'll keep your office looped into any public outreach we do
Thank you.
to parcels. Yep. Next slide, please. Just a little bit closer look. The blue outline is the Cal-Am service area boundary, and the rust colored outline is the district's boundary. And so on the left is Yankee Point, just oddly, slightly misdrawn boundary. I mean, I think at the time we would have known. The Hidden Hills side, I think it was an oversight in our drafting in 1977, because it was just common knowledge that among folks of the district that the Hidden Hills parcels were all west of Laurelis grade. And it turns out that wasn't true, that there were these parcels that you can see to the east of Laurelis grade. So that's all that annexation is about, just trying to bring parcels that are already served by Cal-Am into the same area so that we can also take the distribution system. Next slide, please. These are the primary latent powers. So as I said, there's way too many words on the page, but the section of the district law that is reflected on the left side of the page, and the activation sought is on the right side. So basically we have the legislatively granted ability to produce and deliver water for all purposes within our service territory. So here the activation sought is for running and distributing potable water to retail customers throughout the district. And then also we have the right under our district law to revise and collect rates, fees, and charges, which we will be doing a Prop 218 rate analysis contingent on acquisition, but only if the board decides to move forward with a hearing of public necessity. Next slide, please. These are things that the district already performs. I won't read all of them, but it's not well known that the district does all these things. We actually do billing for water delivered in the Del Monte Forest. Just as an example, that billing system is designed to gross up and could easily handle 40,000 connections in the Cal-Am system. So we already have the tools in place. We do a lot of the water supply and demand analysis, forecasting. With ASR and Pure Water Monterey, we're in basically the wholesale delivery business. And we've been delivering water to retail customers in Del Monte Forest since 1994. So that was just a point we wanted to make to the LAFCO commissioners, that many of the activities that you think you're activating, or latent powers that you think you're activating, are things that we already do and have an understanding of. Next slide, please. And that we also wanted to reinforce with them that we're not just winging this, that we've got a highly capable team, really an all-star team. So our eminent domain attorneys, Rutan and Tucker, have done this kind of work before. Ref Tellis has been super in terms of the financial analysis. Barclays Bank is an investment bank. To basically, they've already given us a letter that indicates that the acquisition could be financed and repaid through rates, not looking at a general obligation bond or some other form of financing that would separate the purchase from the operation. And then we have two firms that have been advising us on operations. And then finally, Rincon Consulting, who did the EIR. And finally, next slide. So we demonstrated financial feasibility back in November of 2019. We completed the CEQA review with your certification in October of this year. The LAFCO approval process, best case, I suspect, is August. So it's going a little slower than we had hoped, but we're in pretty regular contact with their staff and talking about how to move things along. So they're doing the best they can. Summer is going to be a little bit of a slowdown, I suspect, just due to scheduling. If the board decides to keep moving forward, then we would need to make a bona fide offer. So our financial consultants have developed a valuation that was kind of ready to go at the end of autumn last year. They will have to update their work for making a bona fide offer at some point this summer because it's sat on the shelf just a little too long. The district would then, if rebuffed, would then decide whether it wants to hold a hearing of public necessity. And that would be your starting point to pass a resolution of necessity, which would then lead to subsequent condemnation action, which is first heard as a right to take bench trial, which would happen next year, and then followed by a jury trial to establish the value, because obviously we're going to come in and say, this is what we think it's worth, and the company will come in and say, but we think it's worth this, and then we will have to see what the courts come to grips with in between those two numbers. And with that, happy to take any questions.
All right, board members, any questions?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Director Rowley.
Joel, could you go back to slide 17, which is the district already performs? My question, Dave, is at the bottom of that list, mainly the environmental stewardship question. I don't know that CalAm does that kind of thing, but the district does. I'm wondering if there's an argument that can be made before LAFCO that not only will we do everything that CalAm does, we will do more than what CalAm does. And I don't know how much of an argument, I don't know how much of that is included in the argument. Just that's a question.
Yeah, and it's a very good notion to highlight because we run the rebate program out of our offices, even though it's paid for through the CalAm bills. And the reason we do that is we want to be able to see where the actual investment goes and who's doing it and kind of being able to track it. Same thing with the environmental stewardship. All of those are contingent liabilities of CalAm's, where the State Water Board said the district's doing it, it has an important effect. If the district decides not to continue doing it, then CalAm will have to pick it up. But we've never done that. We've never stopped doing so. So I think, yeah, it's a little bit more holistic to say everything that we currently do, which is an important byproduct of the delivery of water service, we will continue to do and just take on the rest of the activities that we don't do. Yeah.
And it's just being more accountable to the entire the entire issue of water and water supply and environmental sustainability and long-term future.
Yeah. And every utility, every urban water provider has a 5-year urban water management plan requirement. We usually see a draft or even see a final after it's been completed from the company. But we do a lot of that same kind of analysis on a regular basis, supply and demand analysis and, where is the water coming from, where are we headed, what's the per capita use going to be over the next 5 years. So even though there's a requirement and a planning function that the company does, we also, I won't say we duplicate it, but we also have similar, or at least pieces of the same kind of function that we do.
Well, and the last little point through the chair is that our information is made public, and even if CalAm does some of this stuff, they don't make it available to the public. So it's a much broader public service that the district provides. Even though we're going to duplicate a lot of what CalAm does, we do a lot more than that.
Yeah, and just to stay on that for a second, we talked about governance and transparency. Let me just give you a couple examples. Rate making is really obtuse to the regular person. Just the process up at the Utilities Commission itself, trying to become an intervener. It takes really specialized knowledge. And it's also hard to really look at the data and the filings in a general rate case. And there's a operations model that, there's 1,300 pages of submittals. And the way public agencies tend to do it is they do a rate study from an outside consultant, which is a public document. And you're then able as a ratepayer to go in and say, oh, this is what it costs to deliver my water. It's just a little easier. There's what the investor and utilities call a comprehensive planning study, which identifies future capital needs and so forth. Very hard to see an unredacted version of that. The public doesn't really see it. We don't really see it. But public agencies develop capital improvement plans, which are public documents, so that you can see what's coming down the pike that's possibly a high cost item. So it's those kinds of things as well. When we talk about the three thrusts in showing that it's in the public interest, one is just the governance and making it more accessible to the community who wants to know what's going on. So we'll see where it leads.
Thank you.
Any other questions out there? Okay, just a couple from me, Jim. On water supply, let's find out if we're ahead or we're behind on those wells. I love how y'all talk about, well, we either give, we're ahead or we're behind. I want to know exactly where we at. You got into next month to tell me. So that means they can work to catch up now and tell me we caught up or we're behind 3 weeks or 2 weeks. But I need to know, and the public needs to know on that. So please tell next door that.
Yeah, and we're actually project managers, so we have that knowledge. Maureen could conjecture right now, but I think it's just a little premature. So we can report to you next month.
You got a full month. So if we're project managers, I want to know the real numbers. We're behind or we're ahead, or so we can tell the public and they will know where we at. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other board questions? Go ahead, Vice Chair.
Yes, just a brief comment. Our general manager's report on what's involved in the LAFCO process, I think, is really good, really helpful information for the public to have. And of course, people who, can access it through our website, but maybe we can keep in mind other possible opportunities to bring this information out to the public, maybe city council meetings or meetings of other jurisdictions that are impacted. I think it'd be very good to get the information out as much as we can. It's
Okay, any other questions from board members? If not, report from General Counsel.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, members of the public. We have a report, a status report on the complaint that's been filed by the district with the California Public Utilities Commission. This is a bit of a placeholder because we thought we might have a little more to report to you at this point. The complaint was filed on the 5th of May. It has now been assigned a case number. The case number, for those that wish to try to track this, is C for complaint, 21 for the year. So C2105005. And the Public Utilities Commission, if you go to their website, they have a proceeding tracking device. So you can actually subscribe to receive your copies of all matters that are filed in that. Where we are is in a bit of a waiting pattern. The PUC has not yet assigned an ALJ. That is the next step that needs to happen. Once the ALJ is assigned, then there will be formal notice provided by the commission of that assignment to Cal-Am. And then the next step will be a status conference. And then we'll have a better sense as to what the timelines are, what the steps are in terms of going forward. There was an extended report that is in your minutes about this. It's on page 16 for those that would like to take a look at that. The complaint actually seeks an order from the Public Utilities Commission directing that Cal-Am enter into a water purchase agreement to obtain water supply from the expansion of the Pure Water Monterey project. And that's the purpose of this complaint. Mr. Chairman, that completes my report at this time.
Okay, thank you, General Counsel. Could you, we had a citizen asked about other legal actions. Can you tell us, or
Yes, I'd be
It's not-
happy to. Mr. Bear,
Please.
I have a question about the effect of the complaint that the district has received on its EIR on this. There, in answering that, there is no stay or injunction that came with that. If there had been, the court could have directed that no action take place whatsoever on that. That's not the status of that case. So what we are awaiting is a determination as to whether or not the EIR is sufficient. What that means in terms of LAFCO can receive our application, they can process it, they can hold their hearings. What LAFCO cannot do is take a final action on that. We are on track, though. We have hope, or we're very hopeful of having a determination from the court in advance of when LAFCO would otherwise reach that state of its proceedings. So at the moment, that lawsuit is not causing a delay by and of itself of LAFCO's going forward.
Thank you. Any other questions to the general counsel? If none, we'll move along. And we're going to do director's report, including AB 1, 2, 3, 4, reports on trips, conferences, and attendance and meetings. Any board members? Go ahead, Director Rao.
Yeah, there was a water master meeting earlier this month. They're quite focused on the potential readings of some high salinity at one of the wells near the coast at the north edge of the Seaside Basin. They're spending a fair amount of time dealing with consultants on evaluating not only I guess the functionality of the well that had these readings, because there's some suspicion that the well may be faulty or some of the readings, some of the gaskets and so on may have failed. Anyway, and that's going forward with more consulting work, looking at the options around that issue. Mainly, is there seawater intrusion or not? That's still a question that's not been confirmed one way or another. I have a little different question that I'm raising with the district, with the water master, which is they're spending more time talking about replenishment of the basin, and the water master has no commitments for water, and they have no commitments for money, but they have ideas and they have IOUs, and those are about as important as me opening my pockets to them. It's useless. So my issue with them in the coming meetings will be to get the facts about the replenishment concept that they have and the accounting that they have around it, and then have them focus on water, real water, and real options and real money, and not IOUs and this kind of accounting system they've been using for some time. I don't like it. That's the angle I'm on. I've had some conversation with Dave about this, and it's just not getting much traction yet. But as soon as it gets more traction, I think Dave's probably the better one to handle it and not me. But anyway, that's where I'm pushing these days. And I just want you to know that. So that's my report.
All right, thank you, Director Rowley. And on that, with the water master, the district received a letter about that well replacement out there. And that will be going to water supply. So y'all can start the discussion on which way we should go on that. Any other board members have anything? Okay, just a couple of them from the chair here. I want to tell you that I'm having general counsel and general manager prepare a letter to the state water board on that 1,000 acre feet of water that they took from us. Now you know why we need it. We're coming close. So that letter will be going through water demand, and then we're going to the full board. I haven't forgot, and they haven't answered nobody. And I think we have due process in this someplace, and I expect general counsel and general manager to come up with those things. I know you're tired of it. I'm not yet. Okay, my next thing I want to do is thank the public from this board and Monterey One Water Board and everybody that was involved in getting that SEIR certified. I appreciate it. The board appreciate it. And I believe the public appreciate it too. I'm not going to start naming public people because I want to miss one of them and they're going to come looking for me. but all the public that was involved in this. I want to thank them and thank Monterey One Board and staff for all the hard work they did on the SCR. I hope we can move forward, and CalAmp for supporting it. Thank you. That's all I have. Next item will be public hearing time. All right, General Manager, I turn it over to you.
Yep, the first one's relatively straightforward. You have in your packet as item 10A or exhibit 10A, a copy of the current draft of the annual report. This was reviewed at public outreach and then subsequently by each public outreach committee member with some comments and improvements. And in its current state, it meets both our legislative requirements as well as tells a pretty good story. We will, with your approval, we will reformat this slightly so it becomes a 4-page, 11 by 17 foldable single sheet, which is what we've done probably the last 7 years. It'll be available to members of the public who come into our building. It will be on our website. And if directed, we could send it to our, well, we've just sent it because it's in the packet to our distribution list. So with that, we would look for a motion to approve unless there's some significant changes or edits or questions.
Oh, before we get that motion to approve, let's take it out to the public for public comment, please.
So Director Edwards, I do see some new participants, so I'll go through my spiel again. So the Board of Directors welcomes your public comment on the 2020 annual report. You will need to raise your hand via Zoom, or if you're calling in, please push *9. When it is your turn, I will identify you by your name. If you're calling in, I will identify you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. At that time, you will need to push *6 to unmute yourself, and you may identify yourself for the clerk's record. If you are joining us on your electronic device and are calling in, please mute or lower your device volume to limit any feedback that may be transmitted via Zoom. Thank you. And let me take a look at the attendee side. And Director Edwards, I do not see anybody with their hands raised.
Okay, thank you. We need a motion and a second.
I move approval.
Okay, you got one from Director Rowley and Director Amy. I see your hand up, so you can do the second.
Yep.
Okay, anything on the second? Anybody want to speak on the second? If not, roll call vote, please.
Yes, Mayor Director Roberson,
Yes.
Supervisor Director Adams,
Yes.
Director Anderson,
Yes, and very good job on this report, the staff.
Director Malik,
Yes.
Director Riley,
Aye.
Vice Chair Paul. Vice Chair Paul,
Yes.
Chair Edwards.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously on a roll call vote of 7 ayes and 0 noes.
Thank you, Joel. Next item, General Manager.
Yeah, I'll bring John Lear forward to carry us through this one.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Chair Edwards and members of the board, this is a public hearing, and we do have a PowerPoint. And this public hearing is to receive and confirm water supply forecast for the period of May 1, 2021 through September 30, 2022. And with adopting that would also amend the rationing table to guide us through the next water year with the supply that we have in the ground. So next slide, please. This is, as Dave said earlier, a long-term look at what is actually in the ground. So it's not looking at any of the regulations like the CDO or the adjudication decision. It's looking at the component of the water supply that is not going to come from any water project that is going to be relied upon to meet system demand in the end of this water year and through all of next water year, and is that water available in the water supply system. So it applies to the boundaries of the water supply system. And what is included that we're counting are the surface water in the Carmel River and its tributaries, and the groundwater in the Carmel Valley alluvial aquifer in the Seaside Basin. So on the next slide, we have graphically the Seaside Basin to the north, above the peninsula, and then in blue, and then the Carmel Valley alluvial aquifer along the Carmel Valley watershed, the floor of the Carmel Valley watershed. Next slide, please. So this forecast considers not only Cal-Am demand, but also non-Cal-Am demand, who rely almost completely upon the water and the groundwater in the Carmel Valley alluvium in the Seaside Basin. So it's based on all usable surface and groundwater storage in the system as of May 1, 2021, which is what's termed in this rule the carryover storage. Next slide, please. So as we stated, this water supply forecast is based on actual water storage condition. It doesn't account for if you overpumped, what environmental considerations you would have, such as riparian or aquatic resources. And it doesn't consider the water that would be used to meet water demand in the end of this water year and next water year that will come from water resource projects. So just the component that we would look to the natural system for. The rationing trigger for the water supply forecast has been adjusted to reflect the appropriate reductions in pumping with the regulations that are placed on the different resources. And again, it does not assume that any of this supply would be needed if it's being supplied by water resources project operations. Next slide, please. So this is where we sit as of May 1. You can see we have Los Padres Reservoir and the aquifer systems being the upper and lower Carmel Valley aquifer systems and the Seaside coastal system. When we add all usable storage, when we're at maximum capacity, the water resource system has 33,130 acre feet available to be produced. As of May 1, we sit with 28,380, so we're at 86% of maximum capacity. Next slide, please. Now this is balancing that with demand, where the left column, we have the remaining demand for Cal-Am and what would be the remaining demand for the rest of this water year 2021 from non-Cal-Am producers. The demand that would be supplied from the water resource system for Cal-Am. So this is the 3376 from the river and the 1474 from the Seaside Basin, and the rest would be supplied by Pure Water Monterey and ASR. And then we have the non-Cal-Am demand. We sum those on the bottom and end up at the right corner with a need of 13,530 acre feet for Cal-Am and non-Cal-Am demand for the end of water year 2021 and all of water year 2022. In accordance with the rule, we then compare that to the available storage, which was 28,380. Next slide, please. And then we make the conclusion that we have 23,380. We need to have a demand less than that to avoid mandatory water rationing, and we do have that. So according to the rule, we make the conclusion that the current amount of carryover storage is sufficient to begin water year 2022 with the full year supply in reserve. So with the component of the supply that we rely upon from the resource system to meet system demand. And next slide, please. So the recommendation to the board would be to receive this report of the forecast for the rest of water year 2021 and water year 2022. And given that the current carryover storage is more than what is needed, mandatory rationing is not required under the district rules, and because of the stage one that we're in, we shall continue the implementation of its water conservation provisions that are currently in place. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Any board questions? John Lear. Any board questions? If no board questions, Joel, could we take it out to the public and see if they have any?
Director Edwards, I do not see anybody with their hands raised.
Thank you. Need a motion and a second.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll
Okay,
second.
Director Clyde and second by Director Adams. Okay, roll call vote, please.
Yes, Mayor Director Roberson,
Aye.
Supervisor Director Adams,
Aye.
Director Anderson,
Yes,
Director Malik,
Yep.
Director Riley,
Aye.
Vice Chair Paul,
Yes.
Chair Edwards.
Yes,
The motion passes unanimously on a roll call vote of 7 ayes and 0 noes.
thank you. Director Anderson, you have your hand up.
yes, I have a question for John. Is this available somewhere on the website? What you just presented?
Yeah, it will be on the HTML link for item 11 for this
Okay.
meeting. And that's where a staff note is. It is the large amount of the PowerPoint.
Thank you.
So yeah, just for more clarity, if you go to the Who We Are drop-down menu and go to the Board of Directors, and then go to the link to the 2021 agenda packets. We always post these presentations as items presented at the meeting. So it'll probably be up in a day or two.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Paul, the PowerPoint presentations, they were also emailed to all of the directors. So look in your emails. And if not, just give me, send me an email.
All right, Joel, thank you. Next item, GM, action items, I believe.
Yep, this is the first reading of Ordinance 187, and I will let Stephanie Locke tell you what that means, and we'll go from there.
Thank you. Joelle, do we have a PowerPoint?
So directors, are you able to see the PowerPoint presentation?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Lovely. Let's go to the next slide, please. So the board probably remembers this ordinance actually came to the board in January of this year. Draft ordinance number 187 establishes a credit process for the Department of Defense properties. And there are 3 that we have on the peninsula in the CALM systems: Army, the Navy, and the Coast Guard. The amount of time that it takes for these facilities to actually start with their planning process and then get funding and be able to begin construction is an extraordinarily long process that can take literally 20 years plus to get a project through. So this ordinance would extend their water use credits from 10 years where they would expire today and allow them to continue for up to 20 years so that they'd be able to get these projects underway. A similar extension was given to the redevelopment agency sites when the redevelopment agencies were eliminated in 2005. So we allowed them to have up to 20 years also because of the unique timing that it takes to get a project through. By adopting this rule, we have 23 acre-feet of water use credits that would be extended for the 20-year period of time. Some of these, in fact, most of these 23 acre-feet are scheduled to expire in the next year. So this would just give the Army and Navy a little more time to get their projects through. Next, please. In addition to the extension of time for the water credit, this adds Department of Defense to the definition of jurisdiction. And the jurisdiction is defined in Rule 11. And it is also discussed in, I think it's one of the rules, Rule 30 or 32, that discusses the allocation process. And by adding the Department of Defense to our list of jurisdictions, then we'll be poised to be able to give an allocation of water to the different branches when a new water supply is allocated. Right now, they have to go through the city of Monterey if they need water. And so that's been problematic in the past. They've been extremely lucky that the projects that have been undertaken have, for the most part, they've been able to offset new demand by using credit that they were able to obtain by either retrofitting or by demolishing other buildings to offset the new uses. Their permitting process is at a federal level, it's not local. So, you know, the cooperation of the Department of Defense is really important for us to be able to track what the demand and what kind of credit and demand we've got going on. Next. And then finally, unrelated to the DoD sites is the ordinance authorizes the general manager to extend any water use credit for up to 1 year when there's justifiable cause. And, you know, those things probably come up once in a really blue moon, but there could be a situation where somebody purchased a property and they're trying to get their permits, and for whatever reason, they're having issues with the jurisdiction and getting them, and the water credit's going to expire. And so in that type of a situation, the general manager would have the authority to grant up to 1 year if there was justifiable cause. Next. So back to the whole thing of the second first reading. Since this was 4 months ago, Chair Edwards thought it would be good to bring it back again and kind of refresh the board as to what we were doing. We had our first reading January 25th. The board approved the first reading, and at that time there was, we still had some work to do with the Naval Support Activity Monterey. And I have to say that we spent 4 months doing some extraordinary work, and I'm extremely pleased to have worked with the NSAM people. They did just an amazing job of going back through 20 years of records to determine what projects they had undertaken, whether it was a demolition, a retrofit, removal of landscaping, new buildings that were constructed. We had a period of time during those 20 years where we didn't have the permitting in place that we have with the Army at this point. And so we had kind of lost track of things. And so I have to say that this was just rebuilding the entire history. And ultimately it came out that we've come up with something that I think we're all happy with at this point. The effort that was undertaken at the Naval Support Activity to do things like retrofit buildings, waterless urinals, taking out landscaping. And I believe at this point, they don't have any of their landscape any longer that's on Cal-Am. So it's on the main station. So it's been a really big effort, and I'm really pleased that we got to this point. But I do want to let the board know that there was a significant effort that went into place. Next, please. So in summary, the Water Demand Committee supports the ordinance. That was unanimous in January. The Army had a letter of support in our January 2021 packet. And between now and second reading, we'll file the initial study with the county, get the CEQA process done, and you'll consider the CEQA finding at the second reading when we consider adoption. Recommendation, please receive public comment and then approve the first reading of ordinance 187, and then we'll bring the ordinance back next month for adoption. That's my presentation.
Thank you,
Stephanie. JM, you had something?
No, I was just thanking Stephanie.
All right, thank you too, Stephanie. Any board questions? Go ahead, Director Rao.
Just a quick question on these unique uses of real estate and needing water. Does the airport have a similar standing as we're recommending for the DoD?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
Yeah, they have their own allocation.
Okay, thank you.
Any other board questions? Okay, Joel, let's take it out to the public, see if they have any questions.
Yes, so the Board of Directors welcomes your public comment on item number 12, the second first reading on ordinance number 187. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and invite Paul Dow to make his public comment to the board. Directors, are you able to see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. Paul Dow, when you're ready, please present your comment. Paul Dow,
All right.
okay.
Can you hear me, Joel?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. Thank you, Joel. Appreciate it. Good evening, Chair and District Directors. I'm Captain Paul Dale, the Commanding Officer at Naval Support Activity Monterey, home to Naval Postgraduate School and Fleet Numerical. I want to begin my remarks by acknowledging the board's consideration of the Navy's needs by delaying the first reading of the ordinance to evaluate its impacts to the installation. I want to especially extend what we in the Navy call a Bravo Zulu, or well done to Miss Stephanie Locke and Miss Stephanie Kister for their extensive work with my staff to provide analysis, explanations, and education regarding district rules and the applicability to Navy mission. We have learned a lot and become more knowledgeable about the process. While we continue to have concerns about credit availability to support Navy operations, we are grateful for the Water District's willingness to work closely with the Navy and provide flexibility for us to successfully execute our mission. As you are aware, Navy conservation efforts have been documented with the district since the 1980s. Naval Postgraduate School was even awarded membership into your Water Miser Club in 1989. We have continued that aggressive conservation-focused behavior, and through the removal of irrigation systems and landscaping alone, we have saved the peninsula an estimated 30 acre-feet of water annually since 2015. The Navy has suggested special considerations for Department of Defense projects as far back as 1992. We are thus grateful for and can support the creation of a DoD jurisdiction. As stated in your findings, we will work with our Army and Coast Guard counterparts when that future allocation occurs to determine the appropriate mechanism to assign individual allocation amounts. Again, I want to thank you for your time, your staff's knowledge, and our continued relationship with the district. We look forward to future Department of Defense allocation and a permanent, sustainable water solution for the Monterey Peninsula region. Thank you very much and have a good evening.
Thank you, Captain.
And so at this time, I would like to invite Tanya Leaston. So when you're ready, you may present your comment.
Hi, good evening. My name is Tanya Leiston. I'm the Chief of the Environmental Division for Presidio Monterey. I'm speaking on behalf of Colonel Chung. I definitely won't be as eloquent as the Navy, but the Presidio Monterey, we obviously provided our letter for the first reading, so I won't go into that, but we just want to let you guys know we fully support the proposed ordinance, and we definitely appreciate the district's time, especially Stephanie's time in doing this and working with us and the Navy. And we want to thank the Navy as well for supporting us in this action and keeping this ordinance moving. This ordinance, as you know, is very helpful to us in ensuring that the Army can mission requirements. So we really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Next up, I would like to invite Tom Rowley. So when you're ready, Tom, please present your comment.
Yeah, Tom Raleigh, resident of Monterey, retired Navy. Happy to see that Stephanie Locke has come through and provided the needed detail and working with the military facilities to come up with data and program that will work. This has been a hole in the whole process for a long time. So again, congrats to Stephanie and to the staff for getting this done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rowley.
Chair Edwards, I do not see any more individuals with their hands raised, so I'll go ahead and return this back to the board.
Thank you, Joel. Stephanie, one comment before we get started on the vote. Are we going to have any problems with CEQA? Are we going to be on time the next 30 days to make sure we get this back for the second reading?
Yes, I'll have that done. It's already ready to go. I just need to update it with the current number and we'll have it done for you.
Thank you. Director Adams.
Thank you. I too just want to take the opportunity to thank staff and the whole team for the follow-up work with the Navy to address the concerns that were raised again here in January. the Department of the Defense installations within the district are also all within my supervisorial district, and they're a critical part of both our economy and our community. I think it's important that they be able to move forward with the facility improvement projects that might require the water use credit. But as we've learned from the example that we've seen, and I'm very happy that staff addressed this, the speed of the federal government is even slower than that of the county, which is hard to believe. But I just really appreciate that the staff have developed this ordinance, and it's important that we work collaboratively with our DoD partners to retain their water use credits so that it can reflect the length of federal funding timelines and constraints. And with those comments, Mr. Chair, if you would allow, I'd like to move approval of the first reading of Ordinance 187.
Thank you. Director Adams made the first. Do we have a second?
I second.
And a second from the Vice Chair. And quickly on the second, thank you, staff. It was a long road, but you got there. I appreciate it, and the board appreciate it. Mayor Clyde.
Yes, I would just concur with my favorite supervisor, Mary. And the city of Monterey is the language capital of the world, obviously has a stake in this, is supportive of it. For the Defense Institute and the naval installations in our city, and the Coast Guard, also in the city of Monterey, are very important. We certainly want to avoid any kind of base realignment and closures that we faced in the 90s. And I know several years ago, I had breakfast with the Secretary of the Navy. And the first thing he said to me was, "What's your water situation?" And so things haven't, that was a long time ago. And so I'm just very pleased, thanks to Stephanie, the staff, our military friends. And we go forward, we're doing a compatibility study right now. It's through the Monterey Bay Defense Alliance. And one of the things is, it's kind of an odd name because it's not really a compatibility study as much as it is an acknowledgement and appreciation of military installations as educational installations and language installations as much as anything else. So we're currently working through a grant process, and a report will be coming up, and I'm sure water will be included. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Clyde. We have a first and a second. Okay, roll call.
Mayor Director Roberson,
Yes.
Supervisor Director Adams,
Aye.
Director Anderson,
Yes.
Director Malik,
Yes.
Director Riley,
Aye.
Vice Chair Paul,
Yes.
Chair Edwards.
Yes,
The motion passes unanimously on a vote of 7-0.
7-0. Thank you. See you next month. Okay, next item.
Yes, so in keeping with the deja vu section of our program tonight, this is the third attempt to adopt a resolution authorizing our application to LAFCO. We did so the first time in July of last year, and then discovered that there were specific notice requirements that we missed. So then we renoticed it with no substantive changes to the resolution, and properly ratified its prior adoption in August. This, the recommendation needs to be reworded. So when you do come to a motion, it should not be to ratify the resolution, but to adopt the resolution. This has a new resolution number, and it has several modifications to it to respond to a letter that was sent to LAFCO from one of the interveners about what they viewed were shortcomings in our previous resolution. And so we've addressed all of those shortcomings. I think our prior resolution was probably more than sufficient, but using the better part of caution, we did go ahead and address all of the specific comments that were made in the letter from the attorneys to California American Water. And so this resolution does it. Most of the changes are in the final section of the resolution, not in the recitations, but after the "now therefore be it resolved," that section. And with that, I would look for a motion to adopt this resolution. It was noticed correctly, and I think it does everything that we've been asked to do.
What happened to our chair? Chair Edwards is muted. Well, not anymore.
Yes.
Okay, Joel, we would ask in the public.
Yes, so the board of directors invites you to make public comment on item number 13. So Chair Edwards, I do have several speakers that would like to make public comment. So at this time, let me go ahead and share my screen. Tom Rowley, when you're ready, please present your comment.
Yeah, I just had to unmute. Thank you. I just wanted to note that I've not seen presented to the board for approval either of the two operating plans that were criticized back in October. And it would be nice to have seen a full venting of this at the board level. This has not been done. So I just want to point that out. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next up, I would like to invite Susan S. When you're ready, Susan, please present your comment.
Thank you, Joelle. Thank you for letting me speak. I totally support this, and I wanted to thank you. I know originally that this was looked at as a lot of extra work and probably unnecessary, but thank you for taking the extra step to ensure that this is going to go through and all the extra work that you had to do to make it happen. I also missed out on the annual report comment because I was writing a comment, but I wanted to thank the board, general manager, and all of the staff for hanging in there in this last year and accomplishing so much in the middle of a pandemic, including making these meetings very open and available. And I really appreciated it. And I think a part of the annual report that wasn't there was working through this all under such a difficult time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Edwards, seeing that there's no more hands raised, I'll go ahead and turn this back to the board.
All right, thank you, Joel. Board members, any comments? Go ahead, Director Rao.
Yeah, just a quick question about the LAFCO letter for incompleteness. Were there other items besides CalAM's comments that could have been or were included in this resolution?
Yes and no. For the resolution, it was only correcting resolution-specific items that were raised really by the attorney. The other incomplete items were addressed in a revised application that was submitted a couple weeks ago. And then General Counsel Laredo and I have had one follow-up call, and we've got another one scheduled for next week to continue dealing with any other outstanding issues. One of which is we're trying to draft a memorandum that addresses some of the specific concerns and third-party studies that have been asked for and things like that, which we do not feel are necessary and do not render our application incomplete. But we're trying to assist LAFCO with the justification for why you don't need to go out and do those things. So, but we did submit a 2-page summary of where we think we've addressed every item that was listed in their letter of incomplete. So we think we're complete. There's still some work to be done on the property tax analysis, which we'll discuss on the next item.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Laredo, can you answer Tom Riley's on the operation plans, or general manager? Can we answer that, or
It's quite frankly, it's the operations plan did come to the board in draft form. It's premature to be contemplating a final version. That's going to evolve over time, and that's not needed for where we are in the LAFCO process.
Thank you, sir. Mayor Clyde.
Yes, this whole issue of the application being complete or incomplete, when I'm looking at the resolution, it seems to me it's pretty explicit about the pertaining legislation and acts. For example, section 56824.10 of the Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg Act, then California Government Code section 26700, which is referenced twice. So I think my question is what is the actual role of LAFCO in this? Do they have to do the legislation, or are they, I don't want to say, well, I'll say getting off the rails here and asking questions that aren't really relevant to what the ask is?
Dave, you want to take that one, or?
We are having continued discussions with LAFCO staff. There's a, as with anything, this is a fascinating topic. And then we can divide it into things that decision makers would like to know versus things decision makers need to know.
Yes.
And we have had that discussion with staff. We want to be respectful of the commissioners. We want to provide them as much information, but that's if it already exists. If it doesn't yet exist, then we'd like to suggest to them that this is not really in their swim lane. Many of the items to be developed will be developed. They have to be developed before a judge. But if we were to develop that data now, it would be timed out by the time we get back to trial. So we'd have to do it again. So we want to be prudent with our expenditure of funds. We don't want to make this any more expensive to the public than it has to be. And when we know that a bit of information does not yet exist, but it needs to be refined going forward, that's where we need to draw the line. If we already have it, we should share it. We want to be transparent with everyone, but we want to be prudent with those expenditures. And LAFCO staff really does understand that, and I think they're working very cooperatively with us.
Yeah, good to know. And when your general counsel says something's fascinating, you're either in big trouble or things are going well.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mayor Clyde. Any other board questions? Okay, we took it to the public. Need a motion. I move approval. I move to adopt this resolution.
I second the motion.
And okay, I seen Director Rowley wanted to get in there next, so.
Well, and I thought Safwat was in there too, so.
well, let's flip the whole thing. Motion made by Director Saswat, second by Director Rowley. All right. Roll call vote, please.
That's Mayor Director Roberson,
Yes.
Supervisor Director Adams,
Aye.
Director Anderson,
Yes.
Director Malik,
Yes.
Director Riley,
Aye.
Vice Chair Paul,
Yes.
Chair Edwards.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously on a roll call vote of 7 ayes and 0 noes.
Thank you. 7-0. Next item, Jim.
So this is an action item where you would authorize staff to contract with a property tax consultant for this Measure J process. One of the primary concerns that LAFCO staff have raised is what are the impacts to the other tax receiving jurisdictions, and can they be ameliorated somehow? CalAm, as of 2019-20, was the 6th largest property tax source in the county. Actually rose to 5th largest last year. And so the question becomes, if we acquire them as we're exempt from paying property taxes. So the property taxes that go into the county coffers are then lost to the recipients who maybe rely on a portion of their revenues from their share of property taxes allocated to them. In January, on January 6th, we were given a methodology from the County Auditor Controller's Office. About 3 or 4 weeks ago, the County Auditor Controller's Office changed that interpretation to the LAFCO folks. And so there's been a question raised, not only who's impacted, but what are the size of the impacts. When you think about it, CalAM's roughly a $200 million valuation for the water assets in the countywide, which means their share of the 1% assessed value is $2 million. And so what we're talking about is $2 million that is redistributed to the county, the cities, other special districts and school districts, K through 14, and then what the impacts will be. We have contacted 5 property tax consultants. I've had conversations with 2 of them. I've got one scheduled for tomorrow. We have a ballpark, and it is interesting. The one I spoke with early today pegged this thing, and we're going to get proposals from all of them, or all that want to participate, pegged it as kind of a $50,000 item. Whereas the one I talked to this afternoon, who came highly recommended and clearly knows how to walk the walk and talk the talk, said, oh, no, it'll be far less than that. So what I'm asking for is authorization up to $55,000. Accept proposals through, I requested them through this coming Friday, but we'll cut some slack if they need more time to Monday or Tuesday next week. But we really want to get somebody on board right now. And so I think if you give me an amount not to exceed 55,000, then I will do my best to take the most highly qualified, lowest fee base, and we'll go from there. But I didn't want to wait for another board meeting. So we're looking for authorization without a recommendation at this point.
More questions? Director Adams.
Dave, can you tell me, is this a normal step in the procedure that we're going through, and we would have budgeted for this in the overall expectation of things that we would need to pay for?
Yes and no. I mean, there's nothing normal about this. So when Dave said it's fascinating, this is the first large-scale condemnation action LAFCO is seeing here in Monterey County. In South San Joaquin Irrigation District, they did their own property tax analysis. It wasn't a third-party firm. Our analysis to date is as good as or better than their analysis. So we felt confident, but because of some of the confusion over methodology, it's time to have the people who speak the same language talking to each other. And because it seems to be the largest political issue with LAFCO. So as you can imagine, we talk about the top 5, the 5th highest property taxpayer. None of the top 10 are significant. Most of the county's assessed valuation comes from residential and agricultural land values, less so from PG&E, Pebble Beach Company, California American Water. They're in the top 5, but not one of them are greater than 2% of the total for the county. So we're talking small dollars, but when you're talking 2 million, and in one analysis that the county auditor controller looked at, 600,000 affects the county. Well, even though that's a small number relative to the county's total revenues, it's still a big enough number that one can imagine what $600,000 means to the county. So, and then of course, if you use the other methodology that we looked at, it's only about $200,000 impact to the county. So the total impact is going to be the same. It's going to be something under $2 million of tax revenues that are going to get shifted around. Most of the schools, the K through 14 schools, have it made back up or backfilled by the state. But two of the school districts that we have are basic aid schools, and that's Carmel and Pacific Grove. They would not be backfilled. MPC would be backfilled, but North County Fire or the regional fire would not be backfilled. And so some of what we need to look at is who are impacted, how big is that impact, and are there ways that we, the district, can negotiate with them to ease the pain a little bit over time. So I think it's a necessary item. We had always contemplated it for the bench trial so that we could, defend it. It just, the need is here. But no, we didn't really anticipate it for LAFCO. But, it's probably, as I said, the single biggest issue, which is is this in the public interest for the water consumers? And if the answer is yes, are there ancillary effects that hurt other users? And so that's what we're trying to address.
And we would probably be able to use this in the bench trial as well, the same report.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you. That's great.
Just keep in mind, all of our directors, any of these consultants who come back to testify during a bench trial, there will be add-ons, that it'll be their time and expert testimony. So while the documents can stand on their own, defending them will still be yet another expense down the road.
Well, maybe we'll be lucky enough to still be doing Zoom meetings.
Director Anderson, you had your hand up.
Yeah, just a quick question. Is this protocol, what you're going through with these various and sundry estimators and so forth, is this the process that all communities that do this kind of a thing with taking over a company, is this what comes out of all of them? Is there a particular way that these are resolved?
Yeah, it was a key issue in the city of Claremont's attempt to take over their water utility.
Which didn't happen.
And the judge in that particular case found that savings to a special district like ourselves resulting from not having to pay taxes, in that particular judge's opinion, was not a benefit. And so it became a big point for that deliberation. In many other cases, it is deemed to be a benefit. If it's not in your tax, if the taxes aren't in your water bill because you don't have to pay them, it is a genuine savings to a ratepayer. Same thing with shareholder rate of return, same thing with income taxes. Anything that reduces your water rate is a benefit to you as a water rate payer. And California is a little bit quirky in that there's no automatic makeup provision. So if you do lose property tax share as a fire district or as a city, you can't just go out and raise taxes to make up for it. So there is a meaningful reason to look at this, because there will be effects that can't easily be made up. But they're small. They're really small.
Director Rowley.
I think you said the tax assessor has changed the procedure. I'm not sure if that's what you said, but my question is trying to clarify, does that procedure relate to this particular application, or does it relate to countywide and some law that kind of authorized the change? I'm a little curious about the timing.
Yeah, so in January, look, two steps. Utility properties in almost the whole. So like think of PG&E in Southern California, Edison as the electric utilities. They're assessed at the state level under what's called the unitary tax method. And then the state says, okay, here's the total property. And by the way, the unitary tax method wasn't subject to Prop 13. And so they can actually increase the assessed valuation and reassess things almost annually at the utility level. But the water utilities weren't required to be done on the unitary tax basis. So instead of the state establishing a value and then saying, okay, of the taxes that are going to get collected, they're going to go back to this county, and that county in somewhat of a proportionate share relative to how many of those utility assets are in your county. So the state pushes that back to the county. Here for Cal Water Service and California American Water, they don't. They look at the properties owned by the utility and assess each of those individually like they would your house. And so that's where assessed valuation comes from. Our question to them in January was, do you pool all of your taxes received into kind of like a single bucket and then reallocate to the taxing jurisdictions based on their tax rate? And there's an annual book of tax rates, and you can go see who gets 11% and who gets 6% and who gets 3.5% and so forth. And the original answer was yes. And that made the math really easy, which is, well, we know we're not buying every asset. We do know that the water assets that we're looking at purchasing are about 95.5% of the revenues. So if you took 95.5% of the taxes paid in by the company, which will include some taxes for their wastewater systems, then you'd be overstating it. So then you know what your conservative total taxes paid in are, and multiplying by the tax rates, and now you know what each school district and each city and the county itself gets. A few weeks ago, the county said, oh, wait, no, it's not that simple. We actually do allocate the taxes based on how many or how much of the utility assets are in each taxing jurisdiction. To which, by the way, one of the tax consultants I talked to today said, that's not right. So, we are at the point where there is an impact. We need to get the people who speak the same language talking to each other. But yeah, so the change was not a change in law. It was just a change in the information provided to us. And so, as you can imagine, there are certain parts of the county that are really deep in CalAm assets. And so they get a bigger proportion. And so the largest share actually would be the unincorporated county, then followed by, folks like Monterey and Pacific Grove and so forth. So, we need to get to the bottom of which methodology is legit. What are those impacts? Have we adequately made sure that we're only looking at the assessed value paid in by the assets that we're acquiring? Because the other satellites would remain in CalAm's ownership, is the theory at this point. So there's a communication gap. It's not, and we still don't have a firm answer if it's the version that we got in January or the version we got a few weeks ago. And as I said earlier, it doesn't change the total, but it changes the allocation to the other tax receiving jurisdictions. And so we'll get to the bottom of it through this process.
It still seems to me that whatever information is developed through a consultant, that the final impact of those numbers won't be determined until we're way down the road through the trial period. So as much as the information may be interesting, it shouldn't be determinative at this point because we're not there yet. Anyway, that's my...
And that's exactly our approach to the letter of incomplete, where you've got a commissioner saying, hey, I'd like to see a rate study, or you need to do a rate study. Well, we did impacts on rates in the financial feasibility. But if you do a rate study for every year that passes, or you update this kind of property tax with the passage of another year and the reassessment, then you're just in that constant cycle of always trying to update. And its order of magnitude is all we really need. And so, you know, the fact that we did the financial feasibility work at the end of 2019 doesn't mean it's so out of date that we can't use its results. Same thing here, you know, and the LAFCO folks get it at this point where we said, look, you know, this could be a 3-year process or longer. I mean, there are longer ones. So any number we give you today is just a placeholder as an order of magnitude. And so we're trying to be close, we're trying to be correct. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And and this is one of the things, and I know I saw that the associate from the Manat law firm is on listening, but you know, there has to be a limit to how much time and money you're going to spend to get at answers that are irrelevant right now, that are going to be heard and sorted out by the courts later. And we don't want to prejudice our position in the courts later by taking on some of this kind of work today. So you hit the nail on the head in terms of relevance, but we have to get the right order of magnitude, and we have to get the right process. And you know, we got to get the right person who can speak the right language.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other board questions? If no other board questions, let's take it out to the public, Joel.
So the board of directors welcomes your public comment on this matter here. So let me go ahead and take a look at the attendee side. And I'll give it a couple of seconds here, Director Edwards. And I do see here that we have Melody Crislock, who would like to make public comment. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Directors, are you able to see the timer there?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so Melody, when you're ready, please present your comment.
I just wanted to say thank you so much for your diligence and incredible patience in trying to make Measure J a reality for all of the ratepayers. And, you know, I'm sorry to see that Cal-Am continues to play these little legal cat and mouse games to try to stop us and try to make it cost more. And it's like, it's just unfortunate, but thank you so much for your patience and great work in crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's so that Cal-Am just can't stop this. Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, I would like to invite Michael Bear. Michael, when you're ready, please present your comment.
Yeah, I want to echo Melody. You know, a lot of work has gone into this clearly, and just the idea of transparency that you're presenting, you know, you're demonstrating transparency of the process in a way that, you know, working against Cal-Am, I have now for 8 years, and you never know what's going on with those guys on any of this stuff until you read it, filing. But one of the things that I heard Mr. Stoltz say is, an asset valuation related to this tax of roughly $200 million. And, I've been wondering in the Cal-Am letter to, I think it was to LAFCO, maybe it was to Monterey One, they were talking about, well, we want $1 billion, and LAFTELUS said, $500 million, and that's the number we're arguing over. But if, if 200 million is the assets you're acquiring, that hopefully, that there's kind of a lowball sort of initial offering for the takeover. And then of course that brings in the whole thing about the desal plant. The latest I heard was there are actually now $170 million into costs, and and they haven't even broken ground, except for the Monterey pipeline and the test slant well. I mean, those are the only assets, if you will, the only in this huge EIR report. And so I know it's very premature, to be thinking about it, but there's got to be some point where, the desal project is either part of the acquisition or it isn't. And it looks very clearly like it isn't going to be part. It's just going to be a piece of paper by the time you get to court. And so I just wanted to put that out there, you know, that it seems like the elephant in the room in some ways. And just once again, to praise this group, to praise the staff, to praise the board for all your hard work. You're working very diligently. My hat's off to you guys. Keep up, and gals, keep up the great work. And thank you so much for proceeding with the Measure J voters gave you a mission, and you guys are doing a fantastic job. So keep it up.
Thank you.
Director Edwards, I do not see anybody with their hands raised, so I'll go ahead and return this back to the board.
Thank you, Joel. Any other board questions? Okay, need a motion.
I make a motion to approve.
Okay, I'll give you a second. Don't need to waiting on it. Okay, motion approved on the second. GM, just to make sure that we throwing out a lot of money when we start telling people how much we're going to spend. I'm glad you're really looking at these people and make sure that we can get our money's worth out of them. If not, we don't hire them. We look some more. But
Yeah.
we need to move this forward. I'm glad you're searching like that. Any other comments? If none, roll call, please.
Mayor Director Roberson,
Aye.
Supervisor Director Adams,
Aye.
Director Anderson,
Yes.
Director Malik,
Yes.
Director Riley,
Aye.
Vice Chair Paul,
Yes.
Director Edwards.
Yes,
The motion passes unanimously on a vote of 7-0.
thank you, 7-0. Next item, Jim, more money.
More money. So we've received a request from LAFCO, which is part of their invoice dated May 7th, which is the exhibit 15A. They think that the bulk of their work has been done and they'll be burning fewer hours in May, June, July. Nevertheless, they want an additional deposit. So, originally we filed a deposit of $7,200, which was within my authorization. But now clearly we're going to be in the north of 50,000 when it all comes home to roost, I think. So this is looking for you to just authorize up to 80,000 total, which would already include the expended 7,200. And LAFCO fees are both component elements of fees that they pay to others. So State Board of Equalization is one that I highlighted here, as well as the Department of Fish and Wildlife. And then their time. And their time, actually, I think it was Vice Chair Paul asked a question of me earlier today about the hourly rate. It is an hourly rate that they passed in November of 2020. So it's their stated scheduled blended hourly rate. Previously, they were at $125 an hour since I think 2008, which had been flat that entire time. So they took it upon themselves to raise that to $165 an hour, and that's what the invoice and the payment deposit are all based on going forward.
Okay, any board questions? Board questions to the general manager on this item? If not none, Joel, let's take it out to the public.
Yes, so the Board of Directors welcomes your public comment on item number 15. Please raise your hand via Zoom, or if you're calling in, push *9. I'll give it a couple seconds here. And Chair Edwards, I do not see anybody with their hands raised.
Thank you. Hey, open for a motion.
So move.
Okay, first by Director Rowley, second by Vice Chair. Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Mayor Roberson,
Yes.
Supervisor Director Adams,
Aye.
Director Anderson,
Yes.
Director Malik,
Yep.
Director Riley,
Aye.
Vice Chair Paw,
Yes.
and Chair Edwards.
Yes,
The motion passes unanimously on a vote of 7-0.
7-0. Thank you. Next item, Dan.
Yeah, the last item tonight is a discussion item. Just want to begin hearing your views on direction you want to head for reopening post-COVID. You know, we're not yet post-COVID. Here in the county, we're still at the orange level, haven't gotten to green yet. The governor's talked about June 15th as being a date where the state can fully reopen. Joelle's done some inquiry as to potential other spaces we could meet in if we wanted to have public board meetings. Some of the other agencies have begun reopening. We've had people in the building off and on continuously since the beginning of this, but now it's getting to a point of, you know, for example, Monterey One Water reopened their public desk. No more than 2 customers can be in the lobby at the same time. But they're starting. Sand City and I think Monterey One Water are trialing a device called an OWL, which is a 360-degree camera, voice activated, that would allow a board to meet while also maintaining its Zoom presence for the public. The issues we're going to have, and I kind of want to divide this into 2 parts, the business of the district as well as the business of the board. If we were to try to set up our boardroom with social distancing and with plexiglass between the board members, you know, we don't have a fixed dais. So we use the tables that we roll around and put into place. So plexiglass is going to be an issue. Social distancing would pretty much consume almost all the room we have just to set up the board and key staff. It'd be very hard to have the public in a public meeting, which kind of begs the question as to why would we do that then when this is working so well for now. But we're coming up on that time. I've had staff, Stephanie Locke attended a law firm's 1-hour webinar on reopening. She's done some additional research, and I don't know, Stephanie, if you want to weigh in, but you know, employees who have young children or school-age children, not all the daycare options are fully back and functional. After school programs are not all fully back and functional. So we've got certain staffers who have different needs than other staffers. We've got a number of staffers who think that their environment's quieter and they're more focused and they can do more. I've only half jokingly said, well, if we want to go to a hybrid model, it might not include Mondays or Fridays as work from home days. And then we'll find out how committed people are to their hybrid model for a Tuesday or a Thursday or what have you. But we're starting to study it. But I was really interested to hear whether you think you want to try to get back in person for board meetings, or if this is sufficient for another couple of months. That's first off. And then second off, the how would we reopen if we want to reopen question is something I think we need more information on, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
All right, board members. Director Anderson had her hand up first, and then Director Malik. You be second. You got third, said Vice Chair.
Seems to
All right,
me that
fourth. All right, let's go.
if we're not in a big rush, I mean, there's a lot involved with coming back to the district office, and there isn't going to be really room to have the public in there. I would just say, let's wait a number of months and see how it's playing out in other spaces. At least right now we can continue with the the public attending our meetings and having an easy way to make comments.
Okay, Director Malik? You on? Okay.
I would say at least we wait until the June 15th comes along and see how the state is going to act or not. And things are still up in the air. So I agree that we should just wait at least another month or so, and then we can revisit in our next meeting next month.
Okay, Vice Chair.
Yes, if we have staff that are affected by having children at home because of the schools or not being open or childcare or preschools, I think we should think about them. And at least for school-age children, we think we know that they'll probably be back in school in the fall, late August or early September. So I think we should take that into account if we have staff that are in that situation, that they're affected, and if it would make it difficult for them to work if they had to come to the office. I mean, different ways we could accommodate that by some flexibility. But I think we should take it into account. And if that means waiting until the children go back to school, I really don't see a problem with that. The other thing to consider would be the more people are vaccinated before we start meeting in person, the better. So if we can encourage all those who have not yet been vaccinated to get vaccinated, employees, and I mean, hopefully some more members of the public will also be getting vaccinated in the coming weeks. So waiting a little bit has the advantage of hopefully having a higher percentage of people vaccinated too.
Yeah, and I want to address that. I think we on staff are pretty close to 100%, which is great. The biggest concern we have are opening our doors again to service deliveries and customers without really knowing much about them. I think that, Stephanie, you determined we actually could ask somebody who wants to come to the permit desk if they've been vaccinated, that it's not a violation of?
Well, no, you can ask staff, but they don't have to give you any information if they didn't do it. They don't, it's all private health issues. But people, so the city of Carmel is opening their city hall. They're going to have people fill out a health questionnaire before they come in, and they're going to limit it to 2 people in the lobby. So, and staff has to go through screening and the protocol for reporting if you happen to be around somebody who tested positive and that kind of thing.
And what's interesting is we still don't know everything. I mean, have you seen what's going on with the New York Yankees? These are folks who went through the vaccination process and yet are now testing positive. I think it's eight members of the organization, including players and staff.
Hey, this is Suresh. Just to update on that, one staffer got tested positive yesterday. But just to go back on Stephanie's point, right now we can entertain different protocols, but come June 15, all the protocols could be out the door. So we definitely want to see what the state comes out with in terms of how the reopening plan is for June 15.
Yeah. Well, we haven't heard from everybody yet, but it seems to be, what I'm hearing is no one's in a super big hurry to jump ahead of June 15th, so.
Director Rowley, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm curious about the OWL system you mentioned, but I'm not so curious that I want to accelerate that. I do think being cautious is the better part here, the better decision. I also think that GM, you need more time to sort out what technology might work or how the spatial requirements might be implemented. I would like to look toward at least 2 or maybe even 3 months. They say in August. I would say, let's take this up again in August and see, Dave, if you have, well, 2 thoughts. One is the district board public meetings, I think, should continue the way they have been for the next few months and not move in any particular direction yet until we know more. And I'm just saying, it seems to be working. We get a fair amount of public participation. The process seems to be relatively smooth, a little time consuming, but still smooth. And on the staff side, I would like to leave it to the GM to kind of sort out how and when and what days and how all that thing might work. Because I think that's a completely different kind of impact question and protection question. And I just think we ought to treat those very, very separately. As the GM thinks that there's some ways that things might work at the staff level and two people at a time or one person at a time or taking temperature or whatever it might be. I just think I'd like to leave that in the hands of the GM. But as far as our board meeting is concerned, I just wish that we would kind of assume we're going to stay June, July, and August are going to be the same way we've been doing right now. And then we'll know what the state is doing. We'll know what others are doing. We'll know what the experience is. Know more about herd immunity, whatever. But that's my thought.
Yeah, and I guess I should also let you know that there's legislative activity where a couple different assembly members are trying to come up with changes to the Brown Act and changes to meeting rules. And so we need to track that as well. The most recent effort, I think, got diluted down so that a special district like us would not have been affected. But some of these were heading to hybrid models where you were going to be required to have a public option and an electronic option for the same meeting.
Oh,
Wow.
Exactly. That was my reaction, which is especially in the the confines that we have. And how many
Somebody
arms
must have
does
invested
Joel
in
have?
Owl.
Yeah.
Okay, Director Adams, we haven't heard from you.
No, I agree with most everything that has been said. I think that it would be precipitous if we made any kind of decision until after June 15th. We need to see what the county is, what the state rather is going to be doing. I wouldn't want to see us invest in a bunch of plexiglass if they say it's not needed anymore. So I think we should wait until then at least. I'm conscious and supportive of Karen's comments about really taking into account the employees that we have with children and the children not being back in school yet. I understand that. So it sounds to me as if what I've been hearing that we should really wait until the autumn to make a final decision on what it is that we want to do, but that the GM should definitely be the one who makes the determination on what the staff process is going to be. I think that makes a lot more sense to me.
Well, let me be the bad boy. GM, you need to plan on start opening up that first floor. We got plexiglass. We paid for that plexiglass across there. Now we need to get some staff in there and open up the building on the first floor so people can come in. And some people are not used to the computer systems and all that, but we need to start that plan now for June 15th. Upstairs, we can we can look at that some more. But when people coming in, they need to do their permitting. I'm sorry, Stephanie, but your crew is one of the main crews that need to, if we have to put one person or two people behind that plexiglass, we need to open up at least downstairs. I know Sarah over there working, she's in there, but we need that, at least that. Now for board members, for the future, if we want to keep on Zoom and it's legal to keep on Zoom, we can keep on Zoom. I'm not worried about us right now. We can continue on, but we need to get the building start to being back open again. So leave it up to the GM, but we need to start doing that now. So June 15th, we can at least say we open up the downstairs door to some people.
Mm-hmm.
That's my comments. Okay, Vice Chair, and then Director Malik.
A question for Dave Stolt. Have staff resumed doing the compliance inspections, the efficiency compliance inspections that they normally do?
Yes, we're back doing inspections.
Yep. And that's been one of the easier things. Where there's still difficulty is trying to put, you know, 2 staff members in the same cab of a truck to go out to the field. We want to fill a position whose primary job is going to be to shadow another staff member. I don't think we're quite there yet where we want to put both in the same vehicle. And so, you know, there's little nuances to all this stuff, but phone answering would probably be positively impacted by opening up a little bit downstairs at the permit window. So there's pluses and minuses. Some of our counterparts are, you know, restricting the number of staff members in an area to, you know, like 3 when maybe normally there'd be 6, that type of thing. So I think that's where our direction will be is, okay, how can we rotate staff through so that we have coverage, but we don't have everybody on top of each other.
Director Malik.
Chairman Edwards, I'm curious, what is the policy in the city of Seaside?
I don't know. I don't go down there to City Hall, but I know it's open.
Okay, because I called the city of Carmel to set up an appointment today, and they said that lobby is closed, but they accept private meetings with a certain schedule. So again, Carmel is not open to the public. And as I said before, let's wait until June 15th and see what happens.
Oh, I agree with the June 15th date, but we need to start planning now. We can't wait to see what that's my thoughts. We start planning now. You start saying 1 or 2 people are going to be behind the window. If things change on June 15th to the bad, we change back. We go back, but we need to start planning now. So, you know, I'm not going to wait till July, August, or September to start making the decision that we should be making right now or on planning, because you always can change. Nobody going to be in that office until after June 15th, if any time. Just like the mask quarter. We in California, the United States offer masks, but here in California, you still gonna wear a mask until June 15th. So, my comments. Any other comments? Okay, Jim, you have anything else?
Nope, that is a wrap.
General Counsel, anything else?
No, sir. Have a pleasant evening.
And board members, if nothing else, meeting adjourned. See you on the 27th for the budget.
And there is a closed session at the front end of that 27th meeting.
Right.
All right. Thanks for letting us know.
Chair Edwards?
Yes.
Do you want to cover informational items before we adjourn?
Yes. Anybody want anything pulled from information? If not, meeting adjourned.